I want to be able to run the fan independently of the furnace. And there is a switch on my thermostat to do that, but unfortunately, I only have 2 wires to control things from the thermostat, and those are needed to run the furnace. There's a separate wire needed that would go on the G terminal here to run the fan. So what to do? Of course, the first option you think of is, well, I'll run a proper wire from the thermostat to the furnace, but that requires breaking open the wall, fishing the wire. It's messy, expensive. There's got to be a better way. To answer the question of there must be a better way, let's look at this schematic. In the furnace, there's a terminal block with a bunch of terminals on it, some of which are the W, R, and G terminals, and those are mirrored in the thermostat. So the furnace supplies 24 volt AC on the R terminal, and that should be connected to the R terminal of the thermostat. The W terminal of the furnace is, when that's powered, that causes the furnace to turn on. So that's wired to the W terminal in the thermostat. And there's a switch between the R and the W terminals in the thermostat, which when it's closed, supplies power on the W line so that the furnace turns on. And of course that's temperature controlled by the thermostat. There's also a mechanical switch on the outside of the thermostat that you can switch, and that will cause the R terminal in the thermostat to connect to the G terminal, which is supposed to then power the G terminal in the furnace and turn on the furnace fan. But with my 2-wire thermostat, unfortunately, there is no G wire. But, we can solve this little problem by wiring a switch at the furnace between the R and G terminals and mounting the switch on the outside of the furnace. So that is what we're going to do. Okay, here are the components that I bought for the project. A cable with a few wires inside, a switch, and a switch plate. That's it. Now to get started. So here is the furnace, and it has a cover on it that I'm going to have to take off. It looks like it has something that receives a hex Allen key, so I'll get those. And then, of course, before you start, you have to turn off the power to the furnace. There's a switch here I've turned off, and there's a fuse switch I've turned off. So let me go get my Allen key and see if I can get this cover off. All right, I've got my Allen key, and it fits, and left should be open. That's it. And right closed, and then I just have to do this for all 4, turning it left to release the cover. Okay, I've taken off the front cover, and it's quite busy in here, so we've got to figure it out. There's the power coming into the furnace. There's a transformer that steps down to 24 volts. That's the voltage needed at the thermostat. And that comes out of this transformer, comes out on this red wire. If I trace that down, the red wire goes into this circuit board. So that will be where my terminal block is. And sure enough, there at the bottom, there's my terminal block. And you can see the different screws with the letters, and the only ones attached anything are the R and the W1, or there's 2 W's, and they've just bridged them together with that white wire. So that black wire coming from the R, that will be the black wire in the 2-wire thermostat, and the W1 white wire will be the white wire in the thermostat. And you'll notice that we have a G terminal for the fan. So if I connect to the R terminal and the G terminal, and then at the other end of that connection have a switch, I should be able to switch on the furnace motor. Okay, I've used a box cutter to cut off the end portion of the sheath of the cable to expose the wires. There's 4 of them, black, white, red, and ground. I'm going to use the red wire to connect to the R terminal in the furnace, and the black wire to connect to the green terminal for the fan. All right, now I've used my box cutter again to strip the ends of the red and black strands so that I have a connection point to the terminals. Of course, it would be better to use a wire stripper, but I don't have such a thing. Okay, I've prepared both ends of the wires now. So I'm back down at the furnace, and the next thing is I've got to connect from here to the outside of the furnace. And the cabinet has a number of access points opening into it, and I have to find one where there's enough room on the inside for the switch. So I think it really comes down to this one right here. So I'm going to take out that piece of plastic. Okay, I've now removed the plastic plug in the side of the furnace casing. Well, getting the red and black wires into the R and G terminals was quite fussy, required a fair bit of patience. Eventually I got them in, as well as keeping the black wire from the thermostat in the R terminal. So once they're in, snug down the screws, and that end of the connection is finished. After connecting the red and black wires in the furnace, I've put a twist-on wire connector over the other 2 wires of the cable, as that's good practice. All right, now I need to attach the switch to the other end of my wire. The switch has a little word on it that says off, so you know which way is off, which side's up, in other words. So it doesn't matter which wire goes to which terminal. And here's the other end of my wire. I'm going to just split the casing a little bit so I have more freedom to move the wires. And let's get those wires onto these terminals. Okay, I've split my casing a little bit so I have a little more space between my 2 wires, and then I've also bent a U shape in the 2 wires so they'll go around the switch terminals. Okay, my wires are in place around the terminals of the switch, and I've also capped the other 2 wires. So that's basically it. I will test this now, and if it all works, then I can just attach the switch to the side of the furnace. All right, I've turned the power to the furnace back on, which you can tell because there's now a little display on that LED. And then this is called the moment of truth, flip the switch. As long as I don't touch these terminals, which will now be 24-volt live, and nothing happens. Okay, I'm back. I rechecked my connections. Everything looks good. So I went back to the instruction manual of the furnace and looked up some of these codes that are displayed on the LCD display of the integrated circuit of the furnace. And so what I think's happened is that there's probably some delay in some kind of delay circuit in the furnace, and I haven't done anything incorrect. So I'm going to flip the switch again, and this time we're going to take a look at the codes and wait a little bit longer. Okay, so flipping the switch. And the code has changed to COF, which means continuous fan. So that's a good sign. Still nothing happening. Aha, ARF is airflow, and there's the airflow starting up. So there was a delay circuit in the furnace, and maybe you can hear the fan starting up, and the speed of the fan is increasing. So, success! Okay, the last step is to mount the switch into the wall of the furnace. I've turned off the power again to the furnace, and now I'm going to put the switch in through here and attach it with a plate on the other side. Well, my switch plate wasn't wide enough to cover the hole through the furnace, so I'll have to get a new one before I finish up. Okay, so there's the switch plate I've put on the outside and the switch on the inside. And it's just the normal screws that go through the switch plate. I've just tightened them up to pull the switch against the side of the furnace housing. And I pushed it down also so that the bottom screw rests on the lip of the hole into the furnace. So it's pretty solid and it's done. All right, everything's put back together. I've turned the switch to the on and I've let the furnace ramp up, and now it's at its steady state airflow. So all done.